So Rich, you're choosing your rough material for the drawer and door fronts for this cabinet group. Let's get just a quick look at the drawing to see what you have in mind.
Well, when I pick material for stiles, rails, and drawer fronts, I like to use the same piece all the way through. This way the grain continues all the way through, and whether you think so or not, you do notice it when you're looking at the cabinet. It's just a more custom way to do it.
I see. And this is Ribbon Sapelli. Tell us why you selected these particular boards from your stash.
Well, for the heavy stile and rails that we have, you can get what's called pencil grain, or you can get ribbon grain. The ribbon grain is kind of heavier, like this piece. Pencil grain has a very tight line pattern, and I think for drawer fronts and wide stiles and rails, the heavier lines stand out more and look better.
Your rails and stiles in this group are about 4 and 5 inches respectively, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you're just getting organized really to take this down to very rough lengths that are comfortable to put through the tools.
Yeah, when I run material through the planer, I don't like to use long lengths because it eliminates more snipe, and it's just a better result if you put shorter lengths through. So I may take a length that contains 3 drawer fronts and run that through, and then cut it up to my rough lengths after that.
Not to mention it's just more comfortable to work with.
Yeah, I don't want to lift this stuff, I'm too old.
Okay. Rich, you've got your cabinet drawing, your dimension, you've got your parts list developed in terms of the sizes you want to end up with for your rails and stiles for the face frame, the rails and stiles for the cabinet doors, drawer fronts, etc. So give us an idea how you prefer to go about your material selection for a large cabinet group like this.
Well, if I have, say, top drawers that go across the whole front of the cabinet, I want to keep all those drawer fronts out of the same piece of material so the grain follows through across the whole cabinet group.
Can you show us on the drawing what you're talking about? Help us understand that.
Right here, for instance, the top drawers and rails in the cabinets, you want to continue with one piece so the grain follows through each cabinet. Same thing with panels, with bottom rails, and even the stiles that go from top to bottom. If you get them all out of the same piece of material, first of all, that's better for milling, because one may spring one way, one may spring another way if you're cutting out of 2 different pieces, and then you're going to wind up having to straighten them out or flatten them again. I like to rip as much of the face of the cabinet out of the same piece of material as I can.
So that you have a consistent appearance.
Yeah, in color and grain.
All right. So for the cabinet doors and drawer fronts, you've selected, it looks like, 2 pieces of rough sawn sapelli. You're starting out with a 5/4 thickness. That happens to be what you have in your stash. And then your plan is to supplement it. This is a piece that you've got your hands on here that's left over from another project that happens to be milled from the same bundle of material.
Yeah.
And you'll be using that to supplement what you'll get out of the rough. So tell us how you're going to use the rough and what's next.
Well, what I like to do is maybe get lengths of 4, 5, 6 feet that's easy to handle, but contains the pieces that you need for particular cabinets, and mill them all together. I don't want to cut separate drawer pieces and put them through the tools, because it's not going to work, because you're going to get snipe on the wood, you're going to get a little chatter from the blades.
So you think it would be a mistake to run, in this case, what is this, about 14-foot piece of lumber all in one shot through any of these big tools, much less a portable tool?
Yeah, it's too big to control, and you could, if the wood flexes coming in or out, it's going to affect snipe going through the blades.
All right, so bring it down to a manageable size. So for example, on this wider piece, you're going to make a few cross cuts in it to bring it down to a reasonable size. It looks like you've laid out, corresponding with your drawing, a drawer front, a pair of the narrow top rails for the middle cabinet door, and then the opposing drawer front on the cabinet opposite, and then another drawer front, another pair of upper rails for a cabinet door, and the other door front. And then you're going to make a cut right here.
Yeah, and it repeats the rest of that piece.
And then that repeats for the length of the piece. And so you'll end up with a piece here, looks like about 6 feet long, that's manageable to work with, to run through the jointer planer, and you'll show us how you do that.
Yeah.
Let's
There's
see.
certain parts of the board that you have to mill first before you move on to the next face or edge. So there's
Okay.
a sequence to that.
So the piece that you've got your hand on here, it's about 8 inches wide. This you've selected for basically all of the horizontal parts for the doors and drawer fronts. And then the narrower piece beside it, that's just the right size for the vertical components that you need. And then you'll supplement that with this other piece that's already milled. Still needs to be sized though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that. What we see here is you've simply sized down, done a cross cut to reduce the long 14-foot length down to manageable sizes of your rough material so that you can take the next steps with it. Over here on the table, you've gotten a little bit farther with this. What is this that we're looking at here, Rich?
This is the face frame material. I'm not going to mill all my face frame material and my drawer fronts and door fronts to the same thickness yet, because while I'm assembling the face frames, there is a chance that the drawer front and the door front material could warp or move around a little bit before it's used, so I'll leave it heavy until it's time to fit them in the face frame, and then I'll make the final sizing on it.
What's the final thickness where you want to be with all of this?
3/4 of an inch.
Okay, all
You
right.
always want to use rough material, because if you buy 3/4 inch material from a lumber yard, most likely it's going to be under or oversized, and you're going to wind up having to replane it or flatten it, and you're going to wind up with different size than you want to use.
All right. These are rough lengths for your face frame, rails and stiles. What is your first step in getting this ready for what you want to do?
Well, these are going to be split in half for the face frame material. So I have a rough width and a rough length and a rough thickness. So the first thing I'm going to do is run these pieces through the jointer on the flat to flatten one edge before it goes through the thickness planer.
Well, some would say that that's overkill. In this case, this material has already been milled, so why do you think that's important?
Well, we're going to do it again just to make sure, because if you don't flatten it, it'll just follow the rollers in the thickness planer, and it won't flatten it. It'll just plane it to a thickness and still be warped.
All right. How do you set up for that?
When you flatten, you only want to take at the most a 30-second off. So I will set this to a little bit under a 30-second. And what you need to take into consideration is which way the board is cupped, if it is. If the board is cupped, you want the 2 points of the concave part of the wood down, because that will support both edges of it. If you put the convex sides up, it's going to rock, and it's going to throw it all off. It's not going to flatten it. It's going to make it like a wedge shape, because you're going to favor one edge of it.
I see. And in this case, I see what looks like a reference mark on the edge of the material, on the edge of all of this material, and that's a notation to remind you that that is the side that you've jointed already, and so
Yeah.
you want to put that edge against your fence, right?
So that's your leading side or edge that you're always going to want against the tool.
All right, okay.
So I'll just show you, for an example, how I flatten this piece.
Here we go.
tell by the sound going through the tool how it's cutting. And obviously when you look at it, if there's any rough patches, that means it's not flat. Or if it's rough on both ends, that means your middle is not flat, and vice versa. So you shouldn't need more than 2 or 3 passes to go through at about a 30-second, and that'll flatten it. And then you just put it on something that is flat, and as long as it's not rocking, that means it's flat and ready to go in the thickness planer.
All right, understood. What we're looking at here is you've got your face frame material, rough lengths, jointed on one edge, that jointed edge closest to you, that's what that little tick mark means. And you've also flattened the bottom side of these on the jointer, and you're ready to move to the planer. Tell us what's next.
Well, first thing I'm going to do is I know what size I want to finish at, so I'm going to measure my thickness now. I'm at 15/16. I'm going to take about a 16th off at a time here. So I'm going to set it for 7/8. Make sure you lock it down. And bring all your material. There's a reason why there's rollers on top of this machine like this. You don't want to be walking all over the shop, especially when you're old like me. Okay?
All right.
And make sure when the material comes out of the planer.
Okay, so we have one edge of the face frame material jointed, and you've got the bottom side flattened on the jointer. You're ready to run it through your thickness planer. Tell us what's next, Rich.
So I know the thickness I want to finish at. I'm going to take about a 16th at a time off, no more than that. So I set it for 7/8. I'm at 15/16 right now. And just a little tip to help prevent snipe as you're coming through. When the one piece comes through and it's on the table, you follow it right in with the next piece as you're coming out. This way it keeps the rollers from kicking the piece and helps prevent snipe on each end.
So the front end literally is kissing the rear end of the piece in front of it. Okay.
So you can show that when I do it. So. You've run it through the planer one time, you've taken a 16th of an inch off one side, but you still, at 7/8 of an inch, you still have another full 1/8 to go. So what's the next step? So I'm going to put it down another 16th of an inch And what you have to do, keep in mind, keep the boards in the same position as they come out and they go back in, so you always know which side was already planed. Don't take them out and start flipping them all over and laying them down. Just put them right back to where they were.
The same orientation.
Yeah, I prefer to have my cut side that I just did facing up, so I know I gotta flip it to go in the machine. That's just how I do it. You know, there's other ways to do it. You do what's comfortable for you.
Okay, all right.
And I'm gonna check where I'm at now. I'm at 7/8. I wanna go down to 3/4. I'm gonna set the machine down to 13/16.
Your next cut is at 13/16.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you want to be at 3/4, but
Yeah.
you're only going 1/16 at a time. Why is that important?
Well, you could tear, usually where it'll tear out is going in or coming out, if it's too much for the tool.
You don't want to take too much in one bite.
Yeah, it'll chip it instead of shave it.
Got it.
Okay. So here we have a split in the wood. You'll get a lot of stuff that comes up like this before it's milled, so you don't know it's there until you mill it. So just keep that in mind for when you're choosing your edges to use.
This is the final pass through the planer to take it from what's now 13/16 to the final 3/4 thickness.
Yeah, so now I know both sides are flat, so now just one final pass through and I'll be at 3/4.
Ready to take the next steps here. You've come off the planer, you've got everything down to 3/4 of an inch, and now you're ready for what? Tell us.
Well, I'm gonna make rough width rips for my stiles and rails.
Say that 3 times fast.
So you don't want to have the blade coming out of the saw more than you need to. I will usually keep it about a tooth height out of the material. It's just for safety and kickback. Because the more friction on the blade, the more likely it is to kick back.
All right.
I normally don't even use a riving knife, but this is pretty stable material, so there's really not much gonna pinch or anything like that. Sometimes a riving knife can get in the way. So I'm gonna rip it. I'm looking for finished 1 5/8, so I'm gonna rip it to 1 3/4 rough. And then we're gonna run it gang style on edge through the planer to get it down to the size I want.
So your rough rip ends up, you want it to be a full 1/8 inch wider than your finished width.
Yeah.
Okay? So we have rough width rips at 1 3/4. and you want to come down to 1 5/8". What is your final step to accomplish that, Rich?
Well, when it's face frame material, I like to run it through gang style like this. It's better than doing it one piece at a time, because if you go in one piece at a time, it could come off of vertical and wind up making it into a wedge shape. So this helps keep it square to the table when you do it this way. So I'm looking for 1 5/8 finished. I'm set at 1 9/16, and I'll go 2 passes.
So where are we in prep for the next step? What will be next?
Well, I just milled all the face frame material to its finished dimensions, not cut to length, just to width and thickness.
You've got one wider piece in front of you there. What is that, Rich?
This is the bottom rail of 2 of the cabinets. It has an arch in it. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to lay that out with a trammel on a piece of plywood, and I'll show you how I do that tomorrow.
All right.
No special tools needed.
All right. All right. So all this will be cut to length for the rails and stiles. Your apprentice is going to get that organized for you, and we'll take next steps on it tomorrow. Nicely done. Thank you.